Hey, Fibers. Tonight, I am smoking a blend that was one of the blends that Toy Maker Larry sent. And it's Bygone honey and chocolate. And I hadn't really looked at this. I just started smoking it yesterday. And it's about the fourth bowl of it. Love it. I started to include that in my Christmas list of some tobaccos that I ordered, and I passed it up over. I can't remember which one I passed it up for. It may even been a Peterson blend. Anyway, the honey part sounded great. The chocolate part I was leery of. But I made a mistake by not going ahead and getting a 10 because this is really, really good. And I've become quite fond of some honey blends. And this one is a keeper, and one that got about an ounce of it. And when this is gone, or before it's gone, I want to try to order a 10 of it. It's absolutely really good. On a scale of 1 to 5, this is ranking a 5. And I'm smoking it in a Bulldog Hardcastle. This is the only Bulldog I own. And I practically stole this pipe off of eBay. It was never smoked. I caught it on, I don't know how I looked up and caught it. It was late at night. Caught it on eBay. Wound up giving $18 for that joker. Plus $5 for 8 or $6. Anyway, I had about $24 in it total. And this pipe is in the upper 80s, 88 or so, $90 at pipesandcigars.com. And they're made in the same factory that Dunhill's is made. Matter of fact, Dunhill owns Hardcastle. I'm certainly not comparing it to a Dunhill, but it's kind of like General Motors. You know, they make the high-end Cadillac, but they also make a Buick too. And this would be in the Buick line, certainly not in the Chevy line, which I drive a Chevy. I'm not knocking them because I drive one. But you kind of get my drift. But anyway, I've smoked several honey blends. Havana honey, which Havana honey has got a different little taste to it than a couple of the other honeys. Cajun honey from down at Piper's Haven in Lafayette. Honey Cavendish is an excellent one from the Pipe and Tobacco Shop in Little Rock, Arkansas. They've just got they've got their own little unique flavor to them. If you never try, and I can't describe them. I really wouldn't say it tastes like honey. Maybe, but it's not what you would think. But it is excellent. If you like a milder aromatic, give this a try. Anything. Well, this would be a good one to sample for a honey, because it's hard. This is one Bygone that's available anywhere. And some of these blends I'm talking about are blends that are house blends. But anyway, I'm eating up some of my time here. I've kind of told this story before, but it's a good story and it bears repeating, because I certainly enjoy talking about it. It's always been one of my passions historically. And I mentioned the other day my dad worked for these people for a while, and a very interesting story about these people, and just thought I'd kind of share that with y'all about a lost former roadside icon. And that's and I've worn my Stucky shirt for the video tonight. And my dad worked for them from about 1965 till like November of '79, almost 15 years. Started out as an independent contractor, He was building the Stuckies all over the country, and like I say, me and my brother were honored just before my sisters came along. We were fortunate enough to get to go with him. In the summer, we missed him growing up a lot during the school season, but in the summer we would generally go with him, and we both got to see a huge amount of the country thanks to that. But toward the end of his Stucky career, the last couple of years, they hired him as their director of development. And he would fly out of Monroe every Monday morning to Eastman, Georgia. And from there, they would get on the company plane and fly wherever they were going to check jobs. He became a suit and a tie man at that point. And then on Fridays, he'd fly from Eastman back to Monroe. It was a hectic deal, but he enjoyed it. But Stucky started in the late 30s. Mr. Stucky W.S. Stucky was a roadside peddler, and he sold pecans and whatnot, and produce and peanuts and whatnot on the side of the road, and had sort of like a little wooden lean-to set up, and he was selling his produce, and his wife got to making pecan candy to go along with it, just something to make a few more dollars, pralines, and of course, pralines never was one of their deals, but the big thing was pecan log rolls she made homemade and pecan divinity. And it took off, and they were doing pretty good, and he opened up another little roadside, maybe got a relative or whatever to kind of see after it. And then he began to branch out, he bought a couple of old former, and this is late in the late 30s, early 40s, a couple of old former service station buildings, and he put his little produce and candy stand in there, and he had 4 or 5 places. Well, the war was raging, and the government came in, and they were needing, everything was rationed, but they needed a candy plant an additional one to help supply candy to the soldiers and the sea rations. So they built this candy plant for him, basically in Eastman, Georgia, and during the course of the year, he made candy for the armed forces. And they had kept him squeezed, it was not a lot of money in it, but the payoff at the end was that they would sell him this plant next to nothing. And they did. And I've toured that plant years ago. I don't even know if it's still open. Alfred, you may know. But it was a good, nice little deal then. And of course, it had been modernized significantly in the 70s when I seen it. But from there, he just started opening these stores around, and he made a heck of a deal with Texaco. Now, this was after they had about 20 locations. At this point, he started with a teal roof, the pitched roof that was recognizable from miles away. If he was coming down out in West Texas, coming through the plains or whatever, through the wide open country, or in the plains or in the hilly area coming in, boy, you could really see it. My dad did one in Van Horn, Texas, about 90 miles east of El Paso, 100 miles east of El Paso, and man, you could see that thing for 4 miles coming into it. And of course, they'd always have the big high signs, billboards for miles. Every 5 miles you'd see a Stucky with how many miles it was left, a Stucky billboard. But Texaco made him a deal. They came in. They were very interested in this thing. And they supplied the gasoline. They wanted his business so bad, and maybe he had 40 or 50 by that time. But they put in the gas pumps and gave him $10,000 toward installation. And back then, 10 would way more than do it. They pretty much bought his business. But he had a price that he paid for the gas wholesale. Well, every quarter they would send him a check for a penny a gallon. And those royalties made Mr. Stucky a rich man in itself outside of the Stucky organization. But he had about 65 or 70 stores. And he sold to Pet Milk Corporation out of St. Louis. Pet Milk owned Old El Paso and Musselman Fruit, Whitman's Candy, and Midas Muffler, and several. They were pretty, big size company. Pet milk wasn't their only thing. Well, they took this thing, and Daddy, of course, Mr. Stuckey stayed on as chairman of the board and had tons of stock options. But Daddy, in the beginning, built some under contract as an independent contractor for Mr. Stuckey, 2 or 3. But his heyday came under Pet Milk because Pet had unlimited supply of money, and they started building them left and right. I mean, they were by the time they were finished, it was all said and done, they had 350 some odd stores across the country. And of course, Illinois Central Railroad bought them in a hostile takeover. Stuckey's was on the verge of buying Hardee's hamburger, which they were going to keep running the Hardee's as standalone, but all the Stuckey's snack bars were going to go to Hardee's. For Stuckey's, the last 2 or 3 that were built, they were redoing how they were doing them. They were making the restaurant, they were totally re-imaging them. They were making, and they did one in Denton, Texas, and a couple down in Florida. And they were making the restaurants more, instead of a snack bar, more of a sit-down type restaurant. And changed the menu from the basic, they even had a Mexican line because they owned Old El Paso. And it was a buffet, going to be a buffet style, and it was really going to be nice. And they had committed, I think, $5 million for that year. Supposedly, they thought they could rehab each store for a couple $100,000 back then, and they were going to do that, working with that $5 million budget. Well, they had a couple of them that ran, they were running closer to $500,000. They had a architect down in New Orleans that really pulled the wool over their eyes and cost them a lot of money. Well, IC just said, look, we're not in the, and I think they intended to do this anyway. We're not in the retail business, we're in the manufacturing business, and it's worth more to us as a tax write-off just to surplus this thing and mothball it. And they started selling all the property left and right and closed them. Now, to this day, there's about 40 original Stuckey's. Now, there's some Stuckey's Express, which I looked into and almost bought a franchise when I was in a convenience store. And that's what they do. They take interstate convenience store location, and you put a sign up that says Stuckey Express, and you can buy all the candy and the junk novelties from them. But it was a sad day, my Lord. Back in the heyday, I mean, Stuckey's before cell phones, you could leave if you knew a family member was traveling on vacation and needed to get a hold of them. You could leave a message at Stuckey's, and you could go in and check your messages, and they could catch up with you on the road. But one of the issues that they had, they made a hamburger called the King of the Road, but they didn't have consistency. In other words, they didn't have a central buying place. Each store bought from whatever supplier was closest, and you'd get a good one for lunch. Say you were on the road, you'd get a good one for lunch, the best you ever ate. Well, at supper, you might get one that you couldn't eat, and but it was, the candy, they made, like I say, the pecan log rolls, peanut brittle, and I know when we were on the road, we didn't pass one. Of course, Daddy always liked to stop, especially one he'd built. And we stopped at every one. Well, Lord, I had so many Mexican jumping beans and rubber snakes and those bobbers, but it's just, I've always been interested in the Stuckey deal, and there's still a lot of information on them on the internet, a lot of old pictures and stuff, very interesting. But it's a piece of Americana that's gone by the wayside. And of course, Cracker Barrel's using the concept, and a lot of these truck stops like Love's and Pilot, they're basing their concept sort of kind of off of Stuckey's. And that's what I see Stuckey's, if they'd have survived, was more being like a Love's travel center now. Anyhow, we're out of time again. Hope you enjoyed a little story, and because I sure enjoyed telling it. Y'all take care and have a good one, and God bless.